Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good afternoon. This is our video on freedom part 5. I just need to be able to bring you back to the new approach to learning, realistic leisure learning, necessary in terms of freedom, because one must realize that the previous colonial, if one could put it that way, using the politically correct word because of the strikes at university. But it is so. It's colonial, educational infrastructure. In order to become, to be able to rid oneself from certain barriers that prevents one from acquiring the understanding of the essence of freedom, one needs to, in actual fact, accept the fact that we have been educated in a system that creates obedient citizens and in a sense of an infrastructure that is predetermined in terms of political and economic needs of the rulers of the countries that were conquered by the British and have accepted the British kind of infrastructures. So yes, we are not saying that we were not part of that particular feature of accepting certain features, but it doesn't mean that we can stay in that particular darkness. We need to be able to free ourselves, but we need to understand why we were, in actual fact, trapped in that particular infrastructure, or why were we actually so voluntarily part of it. And it is because it fed on our fears, it fed on our ego, it fed on our desire for power, it fed on our desire to be associated with other people, and it broke down the kind of, in that process, it broke down our spiritual connection in many ways to the Creator. And sometimes we even have in Islamic particular features, we talk about Islamic education and Islamic economics and Islamic art, even, that we try to actually Islamize many of the systems which the West have in actual fact designed in order to keep us, dependent on systems. So yes, we need to change the education and create a new structure that is more value-based, more faith-based. And so, but I've worked on this particular program for the past 28 years. After I discovered that the core feature of child abuse is an infrastructure that traps a person's, new minds into old markets. So let me just come back. I said that the first thing that I was, in actual fact, very, um, very grateful to receive is the 7 activity areas: nature, people, languages, trade, calculation, construction, microscopic, and telescopic. These things are all connected to Quranic ayahs. So let me just briefly take you through it. Nature, the whole Quran basically, calls you attention to the creation of the heavens and the earth, the creation of rain, the animals, the cow, the insects, the running of an animal, all of those particular features. Allah Ta'ala draws our attention to stars. So Allah draws our attention to the universe and to the orbiting of everything around a central force, or the submission actually of the universe to the Creator, in the sense of serving the Creator and serving humanity. So that is when the nature activity comes. And why activity? Is because the Quran basically is about action. Uh, Life is about action. If one doesn't do when you work, one will deteriorate, one will actually die because of a lack of movement of the body. So work is an essential part, whether you do it for money or whether you do it for charity or whether you do it for nothing. It doesn't matter. Work is our survival, because when somebody is sick and is bedridden, you have to turn the person around all the time in order to prevent bed sores. So work is a necessity of life in order to succeed, and from the Quranic perspective, Allah Ta'ala guides us and helps us by saying that Allah has created death and life to test who of us are the best in work. So work is a core feature. That's why I tend to call it nature activity, meaning action, not nature nature learning area or nature, you know, uh, any kind of thing which hasn't got to do with activity, with work. So nature activity. Then the people aspect comes from the Quranic ayah. Allah Ta'ala tells us and reminds us that He has created us in various nations and tribes so that we may get to know each other and in the process get to know ourselves better. Uh, that comes from that ayah in various nations and colors and various languages and tribes. That is basically coming from there. Then, so nature, people, languages, Allah says He has created us in various languages. So that's the same ayah that actually takes out the language feature. Then trade comes from the ayah which actually relates to us that we mustn't eat all our property amongst ourselves and our own family, but we have to trade with one another, you know. And the word that is used for trade in the Quran is nafaqah, which sometimes in our community kind of lessons we tend to think nafaqah is just a kind of giving a woman her food and clothing and a place to stay, which is not really true. It has various deeper meanings, and one of the meanings is to trade. And part of the feature is one thing very interesting is marriage is like a trade; it's a contract. And the Creator in actual fact tells men that he actually should pay his wife to breastfeed his children, which is actually a job that she's doing. And if he pays her for her work that she's doing, then she is economically active in society. So that doesn't happen in our society, which is not really, and therefore, if that doesn't happen in our society, the men are not fair. They don't pay their wives a salary in actual fact to feed their children and to look after their children, which is theirs, entirely theirs. Then obviously everything else is going to fall into pieces. So if we as men do not fulfill that particular avenue of our Islamic advice from the Quran, then how can we talk about anything else? How can we talk about rights of other people if we don't give our women, our wives, their own right and let it run as if they feel that it is their duty to look after the children? So that kind of thing is very core in the Quran, but we tend to overlook it because sometimes one realizes that men are the basic shuyukh and imams, etc., and they basically sometimes interpret the things according to a male perspective. The khuyara the people will say the good from it, but publicly you don't hear this kind of stuff. So necessary in that nafaqah is a trade. So trade comes from that particular ayah, where Allah says also don't trade with other people, buy and sell from other people, buy and sell from, so that you can actually stimulate the economy because it has a multiplier effect. Then trade and then calculations. Calculations that comes from the ayah in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about that everything. Inna kulla shay'in khalaqnahu biqadar. Really, I have created everything in number, in calculation, in order, in a kind of a proportion. It's like a major amount of meanings for qadr. Each thing has its own power, and each thing has its own proportion, its own number, its own qualities, everything, its own dimensions. That ayah alone encapsulates all the kind of so-called Western education that we think about, which is not true. People have tried to separate knowledge from secular knowledge into religious knowledge, which this is not on. This is not real. It's actually it's a kind of disobedience to do that kind of thing because all goodness comes from the Creator, and we have to accept all knowledge comes from the Creator. The Creator teaches us how to write, how to speak, how to hear, grants us all the capacities. So when we come to that kind of humility to accept that, and we know that everything, and then also Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's reported to have said that the words of wisdom, is the haqq of the mu'mineen. Knowledge is the haqq of the mu'mineen, and seek it wherever it is, and the word haqq is interesting in that it also means suitable. It means truthful, it means suitable, it means correct. It's in terms of, and so it means that when a Muslim goes and learn anywhere else, doesn't matter where he gets it from, he'll be able, because of his iman, interpret that information within its truth and suitably in the correct integrated feature in order to, and in actual fact, by doing that, he can actually give it back to the person he's learned from, or that is actually expose that knowledge to him and actually guide that person towards the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the path of faith. So that then calculations come from that ayah. Then construction, Allah says in the Quran, in many particular aspects of the Quran, that He's created us, given us material to build our own houses, to build our, create ornaments for ourselves, to create ships for us, etc. All the kind of things that we need. It's Allah's created all the kind of material and resources for us to construct our life. Even gave us aspects of navigation on how to actually find our way. A kind of a knowledge which is not regularly taught at schools, because only the military does that, but navigation is a core feature in the Quran. How to navigate using the stars, using other features in life, not necessarily these beacons, etc., which is technologically required, but there are other features on how to navigate your life. And then construction and then microscopic and telescopic also comes from the Quran, where Allah Ta'ala says Allah knows every leaf that falls. Allah knows every atom of good that you've done. And Allah knows what is in the heavens and the earth. And this is a very interesting feature. There's an ayah that I found that Allah Ta'ala says He has made the sun, the heavens and the earth subservient to us. It is subservient to us. It actually serves us. And from Him as a gift, you know. وسخر لكم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان وسخر لكم ما في السماوات والأرض جميعا منه إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. And this kind of realization is for those who tafakkur, who reflect. And we dealt with reflection, clearing the mind and just looking at that with anything that you're looking at, people or things or whatever the case may be, with a sense of appreciation from the heart. And that particular thing will send a frequency to us, which is its truthful frequency within itself, and give us all its facets in terms of its needs, etc., and what it's here for, and so on. And we'll acquire through the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the power of the Creator, the wisdom of using a particular thing in its full capacity. And this is very interesting in terms of reflection. So I wanted to just point out that holistic leisure learning, basically, or the 7 activity areas, comes straight from the Quran. And this is what I use in order to link up everything and link up all the fragmented aspects of the education that has been designed for capitalistic requirements, in other words, for specialization, for machine-based and kind of factory-based education, so that each one knows his particular place in the production of mass production of industrialization, and bring all those little fragments of knowledge that has been very beneficial to us in many ways, but in other ways destructive, because people didn't see the link between the two, until they felt that there was a kind of a hole in the ozone layer. Then they started saying, oh my goodness, we can't just do anything to make profit. We need to see to the environment. So environmental awareness has always been in the Quran, in terms of bringing us to the realization that the universe is serving us and we need to serve the Creator. And if we serve the Creator well, then the universe automatically will serve us. So I will, inshallah, come to that point of the power of dhikr, the power of remembrance of the Creator, by different people. There are people that believe truly in the Creator, that are of the Christian community, the Jewish community, the people of the book, the Sabi'een. There are other people who believe in the Creator, and they believe in the last day, and the Creator tells them that Allah will reward them for that. And they also people who make sujood for Allah Ta'ala in the middle of the night. They are not following the kind of salah that we do, but they follow the kind of salah that their prophets in actual fact had done. And they are like, although the Quran tells you it's illa qalilan, it's a small percentage of those people, but you have to respect everybody. And because that person has a ruh inside of him, one has to respect people for having been created. And so many other people will say, and even ourselves will realize, that because we are alive, we are, by its nature, because we are alive, we are important. That's why the Creator has created us. We are important. We have to do something specific and unique in service of the Creator. That's why He created us. So we just need to find our particular And we will find it within the talent He has given us. If you're looking at the talents that He's given us, the skills that He's given us, which comes naturally, then we will know that this is what we are actually supposed to do, and we have to do it well. And that's because that's a gift that He has granted us. So now, for many people, if you ask them what is your skill, what is your ability, what is your gift that you was granted them, sometimes they won't know because we've been straitjacketed through education in the sense of no, you have to have a matric exam and then you have to have a BA and all that kind of stuff. And then this is the ancillary subjects, needed subjects before you can do this course and this particular activity. And people don't really come to the realization what is their real talent. And afterwards they finish a particular course and realize they're still not happy. So, but how does one in actual fact find what is your talent? So for me, it works out this way. If it comes easy to you, in other words, nobody taught you, it becomes very easy to you, you're very talented. People will always tell you, oh my goodness, you're so good at this. And you never feel tired when you do that. In actual fact, when you look at the watch, it's like the hours have gone by, and yet you didn't even feel that you've been busy so long in this particular feature of what you are doing. Then also another feature of of knowing this is your particular gift that you've been granted is you always come across it. Wherever you walk somewhere, you find a book, you meet people, you find this person is talking about this thing or mentioning it. You put on the TV and something comes up, and these things are all signs that the Creator gives you, and these are your features that lead to your particular talent or your particular gift that He has given you. And then another feature of knowing what is your talent that you've been granted is that you never get tired. You never get tired. You actually work with your ruh, with your spirit of God, and you're not working with your nafs, which is your own soul on your body. You're working beyond that level. You're working on the natural divine energy that has been granted to you. You never get tired, and you do so much. What you can do in a short period of time, other people will take years to do, and that's your other indication that has been granted to you. And so one has to follow that particular uh, energy of your thoughts and your skills and see how you can apply it in different ways to serve humanity or to serve people and make people happy. I mean, this is the core feature of freedom. Actually, one of the core features of freedom is to make people happy. And when you make people happy, you yourself become happy, and you feel like a sense of freedom. And this is so beautiful about YouTube. I've watched a lot of YouTubes and looked at YouTubes and see the main thing is that people want to share. People want to tell other people about what they feel is important. There are people who do the wrong things on it, but we're not looking at that now. We're looking at really truthful people that really want to share their knowledge. And the internet has given so much freedom to people to express what they want to and what they share with people what they want to. And other people benefit from these. And so this is a kind of a step towards freedom. So you see, in actual fact, there are things that the Creator has granted us in our lives that grants us more and more freedom. But that freedom will be defined later on, inshallah, and you can see where I'm leading to. It's not necessarily the freedom that people define it in terms of politics. It's much greater than that. And this kind of freedom, what I'm leading us towards the appreciation of this kind of freedom, is actually connected at the same time to service. And one looks at the kind of consciousness, and you look at these different levels of consciousness that people talk about in different kinds of philosophies, as well as in business. Now they use that in business, and the highest consciousness is service. And one looks to a hadith, Nabi Muhammad said 1400 and X years ago, that the best leader is the one who serves. So there is a direct difference between what we think is leadership and what we think is service. Sometimes we think that leadership is about control, and you also have kind of an indication of what is management and what is ta'awun. ta'awun, which is liberation support. And that is a thing I'd like to bring in later on from a book I wrote on transformation of education towards ilm. The concept of the difference between management and ta'awun, which is liberation support. In other words, to support people in order to free them. So that's core what we are looking at. If you look at Frankel's work, when he was in Auschwitz, I think it's a concentration camp with the Germans because he's a Jewish man. Um, he looked at himself and thought he's now in a concentration camp, and he thought, so what are my resources that I have? So he didn't like go down in the dumps and feel all depressed. He looked at himself and say, what do I have as a person here in the concentration camp? I am a qualified psychiatrist, and I have got all these people that are actually resources that I can research. And so he basically looked at and monitored the whole experience in this Auschwitz concentration camp. And he saw people that were on the verge of dying would give their bread or whatever they have to somebody else who's busy dying. And then you realize there's something much more than just self-actualization, as people have been, teaching people within a very kind of materialistic world. And he came to the conclusion there must be something higher than the real bodily self. And maybe one can actually look at it. He actually experimentally brought the concept into the Western world of the existence of a spirit higher than the normal kind of thinking of materialism and self-actualization and survival and all that kind of stuff. So yes, everybody had, everyone brings something to the fore to actually help everyone else to arrive at the destination of freedom. Our intellect, our ability to think or to make choices, and that is a core feature of freedom, is to actually make a choice. When one can make a choice and be prepared to accept the repercussions or the reward of one's choices, then one is intelligent. So intelligence and freedom, links up with choice. If there were no choice, we can't develop an intellect. We can't. We're not free, but we have a choice. Even in a situation of hardship, we still have a choice. And it's in actual fact what we do with that particular choice that we have, and where we're going to look for assistance that makes us higher than what the material human being is or the clay human being is. So one looks at the various features of freedom, then one actually realizes that it depends on the way you think that determines your freedom. And thought is an electrical impulse. And an electrical impulse of the mind, experimentally it has been now established that the heart's condition can determine the electrical impulses in the brain. So it's not just the brain controlling the heart, but the heart can actually, if one uses the breath, which the Creator has granted us in a positive, relaxed fashion, and a kind of a more remembrance kind of energy, that when we breathe in, the heart then gets the message. The heart then pumps in a manner which is so relaxing that it sends stimulus to the brain that allows the brain's frontal lobe to actually think differently, make different choices, make better choices, because it's not stressed, it's not disorientated. So here is a feature of using this breath, this ruh that Allah Ta'ala has given us, that we can perhaps understand as a breath, but we must realize that Allah says in the Quran, they ask you about the ruh, the understanding over these. Tell them the ruh is by Allah's amr, by Allah's order. It only operates in the orders or in the advice of the Creator, or in the guidance of the Creator. It does not deviate. And then all the knowledge that the Creator has given about the ruh is only a little available to us. So a lot of it has to do with faith. Having faith, and some people talk about blind faith. Having faith in the existence of the Creator, in the unseen. And when one has that kind of faith in the unseen, you can actually get somewhere. Now, people say, oh, but You have to see something concretely before you can believe in it. And we can ask the question, have you seen an electron already? Have you actually seen a proton? Have you seen a quark? Have you seen a nucleus? No, we've seen the effects of it, but you haven't actually seen it. So even the model on the electron, or the model of the atom that has been designed, is only a model of what we think it could be about. We actually have to believe that the scientist has done the experiments. And we actually believe in the unseen because we haven't done the experiments ourselves. So what we sometimes think is logical is not really so, because I mean, if you look at a razor blade under a microscope, it actually has a wave kind of format. It has a wave format. It's not straight, and yet it cuts us straight in terms of when we shave. So how is that possible? What we see is not necessarily real. There are many other facets of consciousness that we can get into when we use different tools, if one can call it tools, or different methodologies to raise into higher levels of consciousness and higher levels. And the higher the level of the consciousness, the higher the freedom, the less the fear. And this is a beautiful feature. One can take it mathematically. You can say there is a negative relationship or a negative slope in terms of fear and consciousness. As the consciousness raises, the fear decreases. And that's where because one must remember that many actions that people actually get involved with, especially prejudicial actions where people are become stereotyped and racist, or whatever the case may be, or Islamophobia, whatever the case, it comes from fear. And that fear comes from a lack of insight, a lack of consciousness, a lack of knowledge. And that fear comes from Shaitan. It comes from Satan. The Creator says fear comes from Shaitan. So in order to break down the fear, one has to develop a sense of faith in the unseen, in the Creator's presence, in the Creator's that He has availed many things to us. And how do we get there? Is by increasing our quality of our reflection on ourselves and our body and the functioning of our body, ourselves, and as well as the universe and nature itself. So Allah draws our attention all the time to that He is the Lord of the heavens and the earth, and He's provided us with this in order to provide ourselves with clothing and with food, etc. These are all things that draws our attention to the deeper aspect of what is existent. And when people raise their consciousness and the remembrance of the Creator, the universe will serve us. And I'm going to just perhaps end off at this particular video that Sayyidina Maryam, who is the mother of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, she stayed as a young girl, she stayed in the cave where she just remembered the Creator. And the Quran relates the story to her, to us in the Quran. And this is one thing of the Quran. I'd like to encourage people to look at the Quran when they can see that the Quran deals with different dimensions of time and space. And then the uncle comes to her and says to her, I come here to something to the effect that I'm coming here to see how you are, and there's food next to you. But he realizes that that food is out of season. And he says, there's food next to you. And she says, Allah provides rizq to whom He wants to abundantly. So that food came straight from the Jannah to her. It was there for her. Nobody brought it. She didn't have to go to Pick n Pay or buy anything. It was there. And this is the quality of a human being, that if it comes to the point of true ibad, which is a true adorer of the Creator, when he wishes for something, it becomes a reality. And that will be part of the characteristics of the people in Jannah. When they wish for something, it will be there. And this is what the Creator is blowing His ruh into us. And Allah says, when Allah says kun fayakun, He says be, and it is, it exists. He's given us that an inkling of that kind of ability, that when we present our thought and our hearts towards something, then in actual fact it becomes a reality. But we must project our heart in the purest form to what we wish for and what we ask for from the Creator. I just saw a video of person who was given the insight. He's from the Buddhist kind of um, persuasion, that he was granted an opportunity to see with the spiritual eye in a state which he was confined in a jail. He was allowed to see on a higher consciousness the thousands of prayers that are actually raising from the earth to the Creator. But he comes to this particular point where he says some of them actually go into the sea and some of them never reach the top. It goes into the higher consciousness. Only a few goes into the higher consciousness. And he says that and these are only the prayers of people that have truly asked from the bottom of their heart with absolute sincerity, and their prayers are answered. And you know, I have just read in the Quran where Allah talks about prayer, people who make dua. If you make dua other than to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will not reach the Creator. It will actually it will be something in thin air. It will be something that will not reach its destination. So I've read it in the Quran. Yeah, I have seen a video of a person that actually experiences on a higher consciousness. And we have no right to say X or Y is a disbeliever because he follows a particular feature, X or Y. We don't know. We don't know for sure. So, but we can learn from each other, and each individual will be drawn closer to the Creator. Now, I started one video as a difference between an individualist and an individual. An individualist basically believes that he himself is in power. He believes in his nafs, he believes in his inner his self, himself, not his ruh. He believes in himself that he is the one who does everything. Nobody else does it. That's an individualist. An individual is that realizes his connection with the Creator. That is a common feature. We know we are alone in the relationship with the Creator. Even on one of the companions, Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Aisha radiallahu anhu, when Nabi Muhammad sallallahu told her that everybody will rise up in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala absolutely naked, she said, how will we all be naked? She says, on that day people will be not concerned about looking at anyone else except because if we focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we'll be so fearful that he will not even see anybody around him. So we realize that to be an individual connected to the Creator is different to being an individualist. And one of the features of Islamic art, or arts in Islam, if I want to call it arts in Islam and not Islamic art, is if art came first and then it was Islamized. In arts in Islam, the minaret, which you see, that singular thing, building that has the different stages, and then you have the dome next to it. The minaret actually symbolizes the individual that is striving to achieve a contact with the dome. The dome represents the spiritual womb. And that is why it's together. It's always together in terms of this, the symbolism in the art in Islam. So every minaret has got a kind of, and you know it's broader at the bottom and it goes narrower to the top. It actually represents a cycle, or the actual turning of the individual back to his original self in terms of the oneness of the central feature of the minaret, which is a spiral. And we know in terms of many particular sciences how the spiral is present in every particular creation in terms of the what they call about the golden mean and so on, and the golden ratio. And these are all signs that are right in our faces, that are right around us. And all Allah Ta'ala is telling us in the Quran, reflect on these things, think deeply, and bring me to remembrance, and you will arrive at a realization of my absolute creation, of a created, my absolute power to be the Creator, and you will humbly then praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the praise is not for Him, the praise is to actually accentualize the beauty from within ourselves. If we do any other kind of praise for ourselves or other people, then we miss the point. We cannot develop through that. But when we praise the Creator who truly created everything, then we develop a higher consciousness and a higher freedom of seeing and understanding things. Wallahu ta'ala alam. I didn't say that in any other videos, and Allah knows best. We are only trying to understand the realities or the features around us, and may Allah bless us for what we are trying to do and make it easier for us and open our minds and open our hearts to a greater sense of consciousness, inshallah. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.